All right. So to start off, Mark, what am I looking at currently?
So what you're looking at here, this is man to man. Okay. So man to man, you're going to see cover one and cover zero. Now, cover one is the first one we'll show here. Cover one simply means you're going to play man to man with one free safety up at the top. So the guy circled, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's one guy standing in the middle of the field about 20 yards back with a huge vision of everything, right? He's overseeing everything in front of him. He's reading quarterback's eyes. He's the one. Okay. He's the free player and man free. A lot of people call this dog. There's a lot of different nicknames, slang words around. Coaches will use all kinds of different words, but
And
dog,
so
cover one,
just
man, it's all the same.
to back up for a second, man is literally saying that the corner defensive back is running directly with the wide receiver. He has a wide receiver
With
he
the
is
guy he's
responsible.
responsible
Yep.
for. Yes. So
And
just like in basketball terms, like you're responsible for your guy, he's your guy. So wherever he goes, you go. Very simple. Probably one of the easier things to explain in terms of coverage. You have him, and you have him, and if he beats you, not good. Like that's the dummy for that's football 101 dummy. Like that's what
right.
man to man is. Now where it gets complex, um, is kind of where teams are going to try to attack it and expose you. And obviously, it's very hard to play man to man because the receivers are so damn quick and so fast, and
Right.
and
You're
offenses have
expecting your
gotten so
corners to have to
smart.
keep up,
Yeah,
right?
this is now. This used to be what like everyone would play, and you would just put Deion Sanders out there and just be like, "Hey, go take Jerry Rice out of the game completely. Hey, Jalen Ramsey, go make sure that Justin Jefferson doesn't have a catch today." And that's what they would do. But now receivers have gotten so good, and the quarterbacks have gotten so efficient that this is hard to play. Like this is you're not going to see teams play only cover one anymore. You have to throw some zone stuff in there, which allows the defense to kind of be a little more conservative and a little more safe, right? Like you don't feel like at any point someone can score on you. So if you want to show, we can go to the next thing here. And then this clip too, it just shows like there's arrows and stuff. But if you're not watching, it's
Yeah. Well, and
so this is
just
a more simple way to look at it. This graphic. But basically, this just shows like the corner, the strong safety, the other corner. They're responsible for their guys. That's where the lines are showing. And then there's a free safety over the top that's just responsible for anything. Nothing. Basically, your job as a free safety. Nothing gets behind you. Nothing gets
sure.
behind you. Nobody beats you deep.
And just a quick question. So obviously, like the strong safety, while he's technically, a safety, like
Right.
his situation here is covering as if he's a cornerback, right? Like
Correct.
that's
Yeah, so
okay.
he's covering like a slot look, right? So safeties, for the most part, will be known for covering tight ends or slots,
Mhm.
which are the inside receivers, and then on the outside, you have like wide outs or like wide receivers. Those kind of guys look like T Higgins, longer usually, maybe some more speed on the outside sometimes, but like that's corners. Like Jalen Ramsey can kind of do both. He's one of those weird guys that can come in and play the inside slot. He'll also stay out wide, but like yeah, so that's kind of that's a good question. But yeah, the safeties will typically guard the inside guys. Okay. And then the cornerbacks, usually skinnier like Sauce Gardner, he's almost exclusively guarding outside guys.
Sure.
In today's football, it's kind of changed where you can maybe you follow guys around. Like there's some games like Jair Alexander for the Packers this year followed Jefferson everywhere. So if Jefferson lined up in the slot, that's where Alexander went. If he was out wide, that's where Alexander went. And so there's different ways to do it, but the standard cover one is corners will guard wide, safeties will guard
And
interior.
then what one more question before we move on. The will linebacker is now, especially in the NFL, is more and more frequently substituted for what's referred to as a nickel corner,
Nickel,
right?
yeah.
And that's literally so that your linebackers are not getting put out in coverage
Right.
against guys, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. So a lot of times you'll take out a big, beefy, strong linebacker who doesn't run as well, and you'll put in a smaller guy who can cover better. And that just kind of depends on down and distance. If you think a team's going to throw, why would you keep an extra linebacker on the field when you can put a more speedy guy who can actually, stay with a slot receiver or a tight end?
sure. Cool.
But yeah, and a lot of times too, you'll see this free safety, the single high guy cheat towards like if Tyreek Hill's on the right side of the field, chances are that safety is going to cheat that way, right? And that just makes it tougher for the backside guys, and it makes their job harder. But obviously, teams have preferences of who they want to get the ball to, and a lot of the time you'll see defenses shift that way in the
Sure.
secondary to try to
Free
take it.
safety might favor the
Yeah,
guy that's most likely to beat the
exactly,
corner over top. Like, that
exactly,
makes sense. Sure. Okay.
exactly.
So then I think next. Oh, So if you
We
want
have
to
some
explain
clips
this,
and
no,
stuff too. Yeah.
we'll back up
So
on the
this
Zoom a
is
bit.
the best if you're trying to learn like the best example of cover one being played well is the Baltimore Ravens and what they used to do with Ed Reed. I think Ed Reed's the best free safety of all time he's ever played the game. And if this doesn't kind of show you the respect, I mean, this is the best player of all time, Tom Brady, and on his wristband, on his play wristband, it says find 20 on every play in bold. He wrote that himself on his wristband to remind him. Now, every play he's looking down there, reading the plays in the huddle. Beneath that, he sees find 20 on every play. 20 is Ed Reed, number 20. So that just tells you the kind of effect that Ed Reed had on quarterbacks, even the best ever. And then this video, if we'll turn the audio all the way up and I'll shut up and my monotone voice will stop for about 2 minutes. This is Ed Reed with sitting at his, like, this is like they're doing like a Hall of Fame conversation. I think this is one of the coolest clips of all time. This is with Bill Belichick giving respect. Deion Sanders is one of the best man-to-man players of all time right next to him. And this is just them talking about one play that Ed Reed made against Peyton Manning. And I'll just shut up and let it play, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about.
Peyton Manning, I'll guarantee you, knew where Ed Reed was, and it had to fool him that he got all the way there.
You knew that Peyton knew what you would do.
Yeah.
And so you did the opposite of what he had been studying.
Yeah.
And he said it's the first time in his career that he made a career out of thinking what you're thinking and doing the opposite. It's the first time somebody thought what he was thinking, back at him, and you got him back again.
Yeah.
And he was still, the next week, just could not believe it had happened to him.
One of the greatest plays I've ever seen in the NFL.
Peyton, that particular play, studying him that week, he pumps that way, he throws that way. So if you look at the play, you'll see Peyton actually pump that way first. And then he looked back. And when he look at me, and I look like I'm going middle. But I know when he pumps, he's going back. That's why it happened that way. You know, so I was just studying him throughout the week. I was like, oh, this is a gimme. If he pumps, I'm just going to open up, make it look like I'm going middle. But meanwhile, I'm turning the whole time. It was like a punt. Like Coach said, I was there before Reg.
One of the best plays.
Yeah, that's
So
because
that
I'm
yeah.
seeing this for the first time right now, and I'm like, man, because again, like Peyton Manning, Sheriff, like this dude is known for being the best decision maker at the quarterback position in his generation, like bar none. To essentially fake him out and then know when he's going to try to fake you out to get you to react, you don't bite, and then you come back for that interception. It's incredible.
It's absolute next level football IQ and film prep throughout the week. I mean, like you said, right? So in this play, to build off our cover one conversation, it's the best example I could find of showing you what cover one looks like when you execute it. And it's hard as hell to execute it. And it takes a Hall of Fame player like Ed Reed, truly the best ever at that spot, to do shit like this, right? Where he's going towards the middle of the field. He turns his hips like he's going to go left. And he's watching, his eyes are reading Peyton Manning. And when he pumps, most of the time when quarterbacks pump, they go the other way of their pump. So they pump left and they're going to throw right. But Ed Reed studied on film and saw that because Peyton Manning's the Sheriff, he'll pump and then he'll throw the same way he pumped just to throw you off. And Ed Reed saw that and he's like, screw you. I'm going to make you think that I fell for it. I'm going to bait you to throw it, and I'm going to beat you to the spot. So he actually beats the receiver, Reggie Wayne, to the ball here. And yeah, he, like you said, it's like catching a punt. That's how easy it is because he positioned himself so well. And he just outsmarted one of the smartest players we've ever seen play the game. But that's the chess match that's constantly happening between players. And then the scheme itself is coaches. Like this was just simple cover one. And Ed Reed made a, like Belichick said, and how many times have you seen Belichick openly like compliment people? Very rarely.
Yeah.
So you know that respect is real. And I just think this is one of the coolest plays. And this is just a great example of a cover one safety, a free safety making a great play. And if you notice in the footage, everyone underneath them are just responsible for their guy. Like their eyes are just on their guy.
Yeah, we can probably run that back without sound real quick so that you can see as this play develops. There's that. So if you see corner, wide out,
they're all responsible for their guy. And Ed has the freedom to go. Yeah, Ed has the freedom to go wherever he wants, man free.
Right.
So
and he beat his corner, right? So he's probably thinking, "Oh shit, this is about to be a touchdown," and then all of a sudden, the free safety.
And that's what I talked about earlier, John. The difference between a touchdown and interception is that I'm telling you, it's that like if Ed Reed was a hair late getting there, touchdown. Peyton Manning throws this ball a little bit better, and Reggie Wayne is a little bit wider, and Ed Reed can't get there, touchdown. but
Right.
because it's a little bit more inside, and Ed Reed was able to get there with an outstanding speed turn, that's the difference. Now, so that's the benefit of cover one, right? It allows you to blitz a lot because you have man to man, and if you can get your hands on and press these guys and reroute guys, it can disrupt the timing of routes and combinations. But and it gives you a free safety who can make plays like Ed Reed does, and he can just
Right.
go wherever he wants to. It's very
So-
hard for quarterbacks at times.
Just again, I'm an offensive lineman, so like I'm gonna make an assumption here, and you tell me whether or not I'm thinking correctly. I assume that this also kind of puts some gray area as to the middle of the field, right? I look at how these guys are lined up in some of these, and I feel like,
Yeah.
okay, like what if you're trying to beat your guy and
Mhm.
you're, say, a slot receiver, right? Like my first impulse is these linebackers are probably gonna, try to crash here, and then that opens up the middle of the field for you to try to like
Correct.
run a route over here and get yourself open. Is that something that people will try to combat cover one with a lot, is running routes into the middle of the field? like
Exactly.
that?
You led me exactly into what I wanted to talk about next, which is the weaknesses of cover one, right?
Okay.
So we just showed the strength, right? And that clip, Ed Reed clip, that's the strength, is you have a free safety that can make plays like that, and you can be very aggressive. The weakness is you're playing man to man against very talented receivers. And a lot of the time, like John mentioned, you are blitzing inside to try to get heat on the quarterback so that he has to force a throw faster than he wants to, and so that the routes don't fully develop. And basically, you're trying to prevent guys from getting open. A lot of the time, what happens though is these guys are so good, and coaching has gotten so good in terms of offensive scheme that they're designing plays that make it very difficult for guys to protect their inside. Now, the number one rule that every coach I ever had on the defensive side of the ball will say is protect your inside. In man to man, do not get beat across your face inside because you do not have help in there. The free safety is 20 yards deep, and he is responsible for literally the entire deep field. He has no help. He is the help. So if you get beat inside, especially on a quick slant, you're screwed because the linebackers are probably gone blitzing. And not to mention, in man to man, the linebackers will be responsible for the running back if he leaves the backfield and runs a
Right.
route, like Jameer Gibbs and Christian McCaffrey do so well. So here in this clip, John, as you, without even watching this clip, asked a question, which
I opened this up and I
you
saw
open this up. You're
and
watching
this is what do they call this bunch of three
So
receivers?
this is just trips, okay? And
Trips,
they're
right.
close together. They're close together. Now notice something, John, of Ohio State against Tulsa here in this video. Now, if you're listening to the audio, I'll try to describe this as best I can, but this is an episode probably best to watch on YouTube. But there's three receivers close together. Now notice, what do you notice about the Ohio State guys? You notice how they're at levels, how they're not.
I was gonna say, so this guy who's I assume covering the middle receiver here is the closest, and then they kind of stack on top of each other, creating a little bit more distance.
So why do you think, John, that they would not be all even in the same
So
line?
because one, because of the fact that would turn into kind of a cluster, but second, because this guy, the guy that's the furthest back is responsible for, is your fastest wide receiver, right? He's the guy that's going to try to take the top off here. So he's lined up off of him to try to absorb that route as it comes to him and be able to actually have a little bit more space to work with to cover him.
Yeah. So and that's one of the reasons. And like you said, the cluster is actually the main reason. The cluster is, and as you'll see in this play, one of the main downfalls of man-to-man is getting picked. Okay, and you're not technically allowed to do this. It is a loosely called penalty in the NFL and college and high school. But basically, receivers will run routes to help each other get open, especially against man-to-man. So think about it like in basketball when someone sets a screen and then you run off the screen, catch the ball, and shoot like Steph Curry does so well. In football, as you let this one play, the receivers are actually going to just run these routes and purposely get in the way of someone else to allow for his buddy, his teammate, to come open.
So this slot receiver pretty much crosses over his guy towards the outside, so that I don't know which receiver you would call in the middle.
The other slot, yeah. So there's
the other slot receiver
over on the right
crosses inside towards the middle of the field, and his guy can't go and keep with him because the other slot receiver is now directly in his face
and in his way. And a lot of times, so as long as you don't like intentionally do this and like put your hands on them, they won't call this. So John, if you go back to the beginning of this clip again and pause it like right as they start running their routes.
I think I can slow this down even more too. 0.25. Let's go with that.
So the running back to here, if you notice, goes into the flat, which takes the linebacker from the middle of the
Makes the
field
linebackers go
and
and try to
chase.
right.
Yep. So now the middle of the field is wide open because the safety's high and he's trying to get deep to protect his ass. And the underneath route runs wide open because of this little pick play. And this is a 30-yard touchdown against Ohio State, simply off of play design. And that's part of the chess match again, is recognizing that at that yardage, from at that yard mark going into score, a lot of the time Ohio State will play cover one. And so what plays work against cover one? What can we design? What can we practice all week and communicate to our players to help us be in the best situation to win? It doesn't always take on that play, Ohio State's more talented at every single roster spot than Tulsa. But Tulsa scored because Ohio State got out schemed, right? And that happens, at anything. And then the other weakness before we play this clip in cover one, obviously, like John said, the middle of the field, but the seams. Okay. So if you guys understand, and I can try to, I want to work on, and John will work on this with me and try to draw on here. But up the hashes. Okay. So if you think of a football field, up the hashes, the tight end in the slot, that single high safety, he's in the middle of the field, right? So if you're watching the middle of the field, that's a lot of space to cover from sideline to sideline. So the weakness is if you run 4 verticals, which means everybody runs deep and gets width as they go deep down the field on go routes, that safety can only pick one half of the field to cheat towards. And a lot of the time, the ball will be placed on a hash. So you have more room down here on the bottom of the screen here where there's a lot of space. And that safety is responsible for the entire deep field. So if any of these guys playing man-to-man underneath get beat vertically by even a step, and the quarterback throws a good ball, you're looking at a touchdown. So the seams and the outside of the numbers on go routes when you run 4 verticals are difficult to cover against cover one. So John, if you play this clip, you'll kind of see this is Florida doing this. Now they use motion here to just kind of influence. Again, a lot of teams will use motion because it creates challenges for defenses. Like, do you chase him? Notice he's chasing him all the way across the field here. And now he's trying to get set. Like, that's hard to do. Follow somebody, then get set, then cover them. Then they switch release.
And this receiver pretty much picks him too on
and
the way
he picks
on
him,
his
right?
route.
So exactly. So
face.
Again, it's really hard, right? And so notice where the single high safety is. He's over in the middle of the field on the other hash. He can't.
So let's follow him here this time around, right? He's backing up. He's
Look where his
his eyes are this side of the field.
Yeah.
And then it's way too far away for me to get there. Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's one of the things that and that's a hard completion to make sometimes because that is a hard throw. But if you get good at doing that, it's a cover one beater. And it's very challenging. Notice the key thing too there was the motion made that really difficult for that defender to follow him around. So as we get into cover 0, first, do you have any questions with cover 1?
I guess my biggest question, and feel free to add this onto any other coverages, is at what point is cover 1 favored as far as a set of downs, right? Is it more of a first, second down thing because you're less likely to pass? And you can just kind of let your linebackers do their job. You got a free safety if you need it. Or, does it kind of depend? And how often is this ran in the NFL, right? Because as you said, wide receivers are so freaking good now. This, to me, first impression is a huge liability.
Yeah. This is actually run a decent amount in the NFL. It's more not necessarily of down and distance. I mean, it is down and distance. And you would probably see this more on you'll see this on third down and very short, trying to not allow any, no quick receptions, try to get hands on. Anytime you want to blitz, you might do this to try to make it so the quarterback doesn't have anyone to throw to right away. So he's got to really read the defense. And by the time he's ready to throw it, hopefully there's someone hitting him and tackling him. And then you'll see this a lot down in the red zone or where teams are about to score, on the goal line, because you don't want to give them any wiggle room. So you'll get in their face, press them, and just say, all right, we're just going to play man-to-man and make this extremely difficult for you to get open. 0 really well. Because cover 0 is man-to-man with 0 help over the top. There is no free safety. The free safety is now in the box, probably blitzing, probably, picking up on running back or whatever. But that single high safety, that Ed Reed guy that's up in the middle of the field, that's very easy to see if you're watching the game, he's not up there. You got no help behind you. So you're probably bringing pressure.
Right. I was about to say, like, this is like a bring the house situation where it's like,
And you're
we're not trying to cover people. We're trying to murder the quarterback before he can
Yeah.
do anything, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is often called Dion. In like football slang, it's often called Dion or zero, cover zero. You have your 4 defensive backs responsible for the 4 receivers / tight ends / slots, and it's me against you, our guys against your guys. No help over the top, and let's go. And a lot of times you'll see this, like I said, down the goal line, red zone, 3rd and short, or if you're bringing the house. And a lot, and keep in mind too, and I should mention this early on, as we'll see more coverages. Teams like sometimes it's very easy if you're watching the game, like, oh, that's cover 1. A lot of the times it's not that easy. A lot of the times they'll line up, make it look exactly like cover 1, and then right when the ball is snapped, someone flies back into the secondary, and now it's cover 2, or now it's now it's 0. The safety comes flying blitzing like Troy Polamalu used to do, and Ed Reed used to do all the time. He'd blitz from like 20 yards deep, and by the time the ball was snapped, he's in Peyton Manning's face. Like it's and quarterbacks are looking, they're reading. But yeah, in today's game, the chess match that's always happening is making a quarterback think it's cover 0, cover 1, and all of a sudden it's not, or vice versa, right? So a lot of times you'll see defenses disguise in the secondary what's happening, except it's hard to do that at times because there's a lot of ground to cover, and if you get out of position because you're trying to move too late in the snap, like you can get beat because of that as well. So it gets tricky. But that's part of the chess match. So that this is cover 0. And as one of the clips, and I broke this down actually after the Super Bowl, and we can mute myself on the because just so there's not double me, that would be hell. But in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs scored twice on that same play, right? And I broke this film down. It's on our TikToks, on our shorts, if you want to check it out. And it was the same exact play. They were playing man coverage. Now, down in the notice how close they are to the end zone, right? They're on the 5-yard line here, I believe. This is an option to combat when people motion, right? Like I said in the Florida clip, teams will motion a lot to make it harder on you if you're playing man-to-man. And not to mention, John, if you motion and no one follows you, what does that tell the quarterback? Probably not man-to-man, right? Like it makes it easy for the quarterback it makes it harder for the defense to lie to you.
Right.
So if there's motion or there's a shift and no one follows, the other team's in zone. And that automatically flips a switch in the quarterback's head. Okay, I'm thinking zone. So I'm going to go through my zone progression. If motion happens and they're following him, quarterback knows man-to-man. Receiver knows man-to-man. And now the brain is working differently, right? Coaches are thinking differently. So in this clip,
so he's trying to call a knock here.
A knock, yes. So knock here, John. You want to explain what the knock is?
That's essentially saying, hey, like this isn't my guy anymore. Somebody else has to pick him up, right?
Exactly. So in this example, your whole player, which is cover 0, not really. It's more of a cover 1 thing, but he's not really like a free safety. He's more of like an extra tackler because you're so close to the end zone to help with run support and just help with like crossing routes inside. So it's a variation of cover 1, but it's more like cover 0. It's basically just like man-to-man. But if there's motion across the formation, what they'll do is they'll yell knock, 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 or you. And basically the guy who's in the hole will take that guy across the formation now as his guy. And the guy who originally was on that receiver will go to the hole and will be added run support or added support against slants or quick, inside routes. So here he's yelling knock, knock, knock because the Chiefs saw on film the Eagles would do this down in the red zone. But instead of crossing the formation, Kadarius Toney actually, when the ball snapped, comes right back to where he was. And Darius Slay didn't even notice until. I was
about to say, and Slay should have totally just noticed and picked that up. Yeah.
Right, but it's tough because he's already yelling knock because he's, they're coached to, if they do this down here, chase him all the way across or knock. And so he was thinking knock because he was already outflanked, and Kadarius Toney's very fast. And if Kadarius Toney did cross all the way and then did just an out route and no one knocked, he'd be wide open too. So it's hard. It's like pick your poison.
Right.
So that's one of the downfalls to man-to-man as well. So that just kind of shows you that, and that's just an option for switching, I guess.
In that situation, right? Like, what really is the best approach for a defense if like they're using motion to not only bait you to show whether or not you're in man or zone, but also bait you when you're trying to, use like man properly and knock people so that they can actually like, what as a defense do you do in that situation? What's the best practice?
Man. I would say probably play zone where the motion doesn't affect you as much, but you play zone it's harder too, because then it's like now we can just run concepts that attack those zone areas, and we have a pretty good feeling that you'll be open without even having to do a whole lot. Not to mention, you're worried about teams running the ball down there, so that's probably why you're in that man-to-man look where you just want to commit 4 guys to the receivers and let everyone else commit to the run. It is an ongoing chess battle, and especially the closer you get to the end zone, the harder it is to score, right? Because you're committing more people to the run. But teams have gotten so creative. That's why you see so many teams throw close to the end zone nowadays. I mean, you see teams sometimes first down, second down, third down inside the 5-yard line, all 3 downs they're throwing, because why not, right? If you're committing all these guys to the run, you got 7 guys playing the run and only 4 playing the pass. I'm going to bet on one of these crazy good receivers I have on my roster to beat your guy with a double move or good release
or a tall ass
motion,
tight end or whatever.
right? Or a jump ball. And so that is an ongoing challenge, and it's a coaching philosophy. And if you have Jalen Ramsey on the other team, you like to play it. And if you don't, and you have Travis Kelce, or you have Justin Jefferson or someone like that on the offensive side, you dream that somebody plays man to man.